Good afternoon, everybody. And dear colleagues, firstly, I would like to express that I am very pleased to be invited to this symposium. This event where the radiocarbon datings of the great South Caucasian world will be discussed, according to me, is very important event. I would like to start my words by congratulating everyone who contributed to the realization of this event, especially my dear colleagues, Elena and Flavia. The Southern Caucasus, an important and large cultural region of the ancient Near East, draws attention with its different geographical, ecological, and cultural elements. The northeastern part of the Anatolian Peninsula is a part of this cultural region, great cultural region, with its many features. These similar features are also evident from the archaeological point of view. This mountain stone, which forms northern part of the Taurus range, has always turned its face to the north, to the Caucasian world, unlike the southern part, which turned to the Mesopotamian world. In this workshop, focusing on the radiocarbon data of Southern Caucasus, main aim of my presentation is to make an overall assessment of the limited radiocarbon data available in this mountains region. The northeastern Anatolia part, one of the largest sub-geographical regions of Eastern Anatolia, is also known as the Erzurum Kars Plateau, or namely Eastern Anatolian Highlands. Mountain ranges and low plains, river valleys, and high plateaus located between them are the main geographical elements of this hilly ground and raw topography. These low flat plains are both ecological niches for human settlements and natural pathways between Anatolia and Caucasus. Although the archaeological potential of the region, which has a spatial position among the important cultural regions, is quite high, the archaeological research that started at the end of the 9th century have never reached the desired level. You can see the map showing the archaeological works projects done so far in all of Eastern Anatolia. As you can see, the number of excavation sites with radiocarbon datings, which is our subject, is extremely limited. In this respect, the Upper Euphrates Basin, namely Elazığ-Malatya region, plays a leading role through the Eastern Anatolia region. Many researchers have been carried out in this section thanks to the salvage excavations performed within the scope of the dam projects on the Euphrates River. Many Turkish and foreign researchers worked in these projects, which started in the 1960s. The region was introduced to archaeometric studies and analysis for the first time in this process. The first radiocarbon analysis and readings performed in the region during this process. But unfortunately, radiocarbon analyses do not occupy much space among the earliest analyses. As you can see the graph, only 10 excavation, total 23 excavated sites have radiocarbon data. In this respect, the leadership is Arslantepe in Malatya, which is the only systematic and longest lasting excavation in the region. When we look at the northeastern part of Anatolia, which is our main region and a part of the Southern Caucasus, the situation is much more negative than the Upper Euphrates. In this section, the situation consists of short-term projects, mostly rescue excavations, and a small number of analytical studies. Analytical studies, and especially radiocarbon dating, is extremely scarce in the excavation of the region. As seen in this graph, we have total 3 key sites, all of which are located on the Erzurum and Pasinler plains. We will see them in more detail later. Here, the leadership is 2 projects. One of them is SOS, other one is Alaybeyhöyük. In addition, although it's outside of the main region, Büyüktepe, which is located at Bayburt Plain, which is very close to our region, and provided the first data for the region should be included in this group. Moreover, the excavation at this site is the first project of the Sagona and his team, who introduced the radiocarbon dating to the regional archaeology. Now, let's analyze more closely our 4 key sites and their radiocarbon datings in our working area. Our first site is Büyüktepe. This site was excavated by Sagona and his team between 1999 and 1992, and definite as a temporary seasonal campsite of the Kura-Araxian communities by him. It has been proven that the site was inhabited from the EBA to the medieval ages. The first radiocarbon dating obtained from this site belonged to the EBA levels. Analysis on a bone taken from the floor, a large tent foundation belonging to this phase, gives the dates of which you are seen on the slides. The second sample for the radiocarbon from Büyüktepe is a burnt bone fragment in a heart in the same area. This analysis indicates that the settlement was also inhabited during the second half of the second millennium BC. The dates given by the analysis are, you can see on the slide. The third radiocarbon datings group obtained from the Büyüktepe excavations are related to the later periods, Iron Age and late Hellenistic early Roman periods. Total 6 sample analyses. According to them, the site was settled in the wide time periods between 910 and 222. You can see. According to Sagona, in this dating sequence, the date of 170 BC is important point because of the constitutes of a terminus antiquam, the situation for the emergence of the late Hellenistic pattern in the region. We know that this is the out of our period, but just the detailed information. As you can see, the radiocarbon dating obtained from Büyüktepe are the first examples for the region. They presented a series of datings to the EBA, namely Kura-Araxian cultural periods, and the Iron Age and late antiquity. Also, based on the archaeological material compatible with them, Sagona developed the first chronology proposal for both the site and the region, namely northeastern Anatolia. When we look at the key sites in the Erzurum and Pasinler plains, there are only 3 sites that provided radiocarbon datings, although there are 10 excavated sites. Undoubtedly, key sites of Erzurum Karst Plateau in all respects is Sosoyuk. The excavations that continued here between 1994 and 2003 under the direction of the Sagona are an exemplary project, not only in terms of radiocarbon dating, but also in terms of all elements required for the systematic excavation. During the excavations at this site, which is located on the Araxes River Valley, namely Upper Araxes Basin, This valley and important natural road between Eastern Anatolia and Southern Caucasus presented an interrupted stratigraphy from the late Chalcolithic to the medieval ages and related sequence radiocarbon datings. During the 1998 season excavations for the radiocarbon analysis, the charred materials taken from a wall dated to the late Chalcolithic and floor of the Erzurum outside it provided a set of datings for the late Chalcolithic for the first time in the region. I mean Erzurum and Pasinler plates. These samples give the dates for the late Chalcolithic date. You can middle of the 4th millennium and end of the 4th millennium BC. An important group of the radiocarbon sequence at SOS belongs to the EBA1 phase, which is the most important archaeological process of the region and was named after a Kuraraxin culture period. These examples are coals taken from the plastered floor of a house. The results of these 4 samples taken from different points and they yielded a number of results which are, you can see the list on the slides. According to an important group of the carbon sequence, according to Sagona, the radiocarbon dates of this period are not consistent enough and more analysis is needed. Based on them, he proposed a time period of approximately 200 years between 300 and 3800 BC for the EBA1 phase. You can see the radiocarbon readings related with the SOS 3B and EBA1 level. Also, you can see the list. And radiocarbon analysis of total 7 coal samples which were taken from the floor and the heart of the 2 one-room buildings dated to the EBA second or 2 periods provided a series of datings. You can see these datings on the slide. Sagona dated of this phase, which is called SOS 5C in the stratigraphy of the site, to time interval of 2800 and 2500 BC. It's now you can see also the list of total 7 coal samples belong to the early Bronze Age second. And it's known that the architecture of the EBA3 at SOS is quite weak, and this phase is represented by 2 shift graves and a few pits. Radiocarbon samples taken from the bones in these tombs reveal a series of datings for this phase. It especially emphasizes the dating is compatible with a black burnished bowl with lustrous silver sheen from this town. You can see this pottery. And you can see the related datings of the radiocarbon results. And you can see the list of the radiocarbon dates relating to we discussed periods. And the Middle Bronze Age, namely stratigraphy of the SOS sequence, SOS 4A, is represented by a series of peats and several burials reflecting the triality cultural burial customs. Analysis of a bone sample taken from the one of these tombs, namely grave 1, give the dating range 2325 1920 BC. Also, you can see the list on the graph of the radiocarbon datings of Middle Bronze Age 1 phase. The Middle Bronze Age 2 phase, which is represented by source 4b at the Sosoyuk stratification, is represented by a slightly architecture, numerous peats, and a few tombs. There are total 13 samples for radiocarbon analysis taken from the buildings with light architecture, and peats belong to this phase. A typical sample of triality pottery from this context, you can see drawing of this triality pottery, which these dates were taken as also strength to them. Next slide, you can see the dates of the related with this Middle Bronze Age 2. And Sagona, taking all this data into account, he dated the Middle Bronze Age 3 period at Sosoyuk, namely 4B level, to between 2000 and 1500 BC. And you can see the list and the graphs. Lastly, at Sosoyuk, last radiocarbon dating group, which we will consider, is belong to the Iron Ages. There are 2 radiocarbon datings related with SOS 2nd A layer, which corresponds to the Late Bronze, Early Iron Age transition period. The samples taken from the burned floors and the straw and basket on the space consisting of a light architecture and a workshop areas give the following results. You can see these results. Based on this limited radiocarbon data and scant context, he dates the Late Bronze Age, namely source 3, 1500 to 1000, and the Iron Age, namely source 2 level, as a whole to between 1000 and 200 BC. As a result, as it can be seen, a solid stratigraphy could be established for the source settlement by helping of the radiocarbon readings and the archaeological materials supporting to them. In this respect, source literally a key site for the region. In his publications, Sagona underlined that these radiocarbons analyzed and datings have not been sufficient and their number should have been increased. It also highlights the need to check with other data in the vicinity of the site, for example, in the Southern Caucasus and other side of the Eastern Anatolian highland. At the beginning of the 200s, he proposed a temporary regional chronology and the distribution of wares at the site based on them. You can see the graphs and you can see the stratification table. Despite his untimely death and the final reports of the excavations at source not published yet, his work still form the backbone of the region's chronology. Another site with radiocarbon datings in the Erzurum plain is Pulurhöyük. It's known, as it is known, the site is one of the settlements which was excavated by Hamit Zübeyir Koşay in the 1960s. In 2001, a sounding has been performed in two areas at the mount for purpose of section cleaning. During this fieldwork, two samples have taken from both areas for radiocarbon analysis. This project was carried out with the scope of my doctoral project with the support of Sagona and his team. And we could the analysis helping of the Tony. On this occasion, I must once again commemorate him with gratitude. The result of a coal sample taken from an operation area A to the east of the mount, you can see this date. This date, first of all, related with the late Bronze and early Iron Age layer of Sosoyuk, namely SOS second A phase. The ceramics recovered from this area also reflect the characteristic of this period. I will show the drawing the next slide. The result of the other coal sample taken from the operation area B at the western end of the mount gives the dates of 4,242 and 4,075 BC. These dates coincide with the 5A layer of SOS, which is corresponding to the Chalcolithic period. It points even a bit earlier. As a matter of fact, the ceramics, namely black burnished ware, from here also prove the accuracy of this dating. Also, you can see some samples drawings of this pottery from both operation areas. Alaybeyhöyük is the last site to be discussed in the region. This site, which is located on the Karasu Basin, was recently excavated. It is the most important site in the region after Sosoyuk in terms of radiocarbon dating. Between 2006 and 2007, the salvage excavation has been carried out at this settlement as a part of an oil pipeline project, namely TANAP project. A number of important analytical studies were also carried out in the context of this excavation. Total 8 samples were taken for radiocarbon dating. In the aerial photos on slide, you can see the points where the samples were taken. You can see this point. All samples, depending on the amount of the radiocarbon arrangement, was made, and possible dates obtained by provided 2 sigma calibrated Oxcal method. As a result of the excavations, the stratification of the settlement from the Chalcolithic to the medieval ages was revealed. The radiocarbon analysis only provided datings for the Chalcolithic, Iron Age, and Late Antiquity. Unfortunately, no analysis for EBA. The sample for radiocarbon dating giving the earliest dates at the settlement is a bone in the trench D30. It gives the date of 2 sigma calibrated 2,721 and 4,553. This date, which is related with the Chalcolithic periods is slightly earlier than Sos and Tulur sites. Most of other radiocarbon datings at Alaybeyhuyuk belong to the Iron Ages. The earliest of the radiocarbon samples taken is the charred material from trench F28 in the western part of the mount. It gives the date range. You can see this date. Also, this date marks the beginning of the early Iron Age, although the ceramic data is good in the context in which the analysis was taken, but unfortunately architecture is rather weak. Another sample of the radiocarbon dating belonging to the Iron Age layer is a fragment of organic sediment taken from the trench D29. It gives date you can see on the slide. This context, including pottery and small finds recovered from this area, is compatible with the results. The other samples which were taken are the charred materials from the trench A29 in the western part of the mount. They give the dates which you can see the sequence of the datings. According to excavators, these results cast doubt in their reliability. As you can see, their probabilities are very low. Although they point to the middle and late stage of the Iron Age, the supporting elements in terms of architectural and archaeological materials are problematic. Another radiocarbon samples group which provided datings for the late Iron Age and late antiquity was taken from a grave in trench D28 in the western part of the site. The samples taken are a bone from the tomb, are charred material, including a metal dagger, which was a burial gift. Bone sample gives datings you can see on the slide. And two different groups. One of them is the in the tomb, other one is the charred metals in the pottery in the same tomb. Samples taken from a workshop in the western part of the mount constitute the last group of Alaybey radiocarbon datings. Two samples point to Iron Age period of the site. The sample taken from trench E23 gives, you can see this date. As can be seen, the excavations at Alaybeyhuyuk, which is a recent project in the region, have been carried out for a short time and in a narrow area, but presented a good radiocarbon sequence. Unfortunately, radiocarbon dating is only related to the Chalcolithic, Iron, and Late Antiquity periods. There is no radiocarbon analysis of the Bronze Age, which is the most important process of the region. On the other hand, since the excavations took place in a narrow corridor, rich context containing architectural and other findings couldn't be revealed as desired. Despite all these negatives, these projects provided the richest radiocarbon data for Erzurum Pasinler plains and northeastern Anatolia region after the Sosoyuk. As a result, archaeological research in the northeast Anatolia, namely Erzurum Karst Plateau, which is a part of southern Caucasus, are mostly concentrated in Erzurum and Pasinler plains. These two plains are also natural roads connecting eastern Anatolia to the Caucasus world. Few of excavation in these plains are long-term systematic projects and including analytical studies, radiocarbon analysis. In this respect, we have 4 key sites in the region. You can see on the slides: Büyüktepe, Sos, Pulur, and Alaybeyi. When the radiocarbon datings taken from these sites are examined, it is seen that these readings vary from Chalcolithic to the period when the archaeological process began in the region to the medieval age. Radiocarbon datings of the Chalcolithic age are observed at Sos, Alaybeyi, and Pulur. Considering these datings and supporting archaeological material, the beginning of this process for the region can be traced back to the beginning of the 4th millennium BC. The datings from the Sosoyuk clearly reveals the presence of the late Chalcolithic age in the region and the marks to the middle of the 4th millennium BC. The datings from Alaybeyi and Pulur pointed to the beginning of the same millennium and open to discuss possibility of the Middle Chalcolithic periods. Unfortunately, these last 2 excavations are still a matter of debate because both were carried out for a short time and in a narrow area, were not supported by sufficient archaeological context. On the other hand, the sufficient radiocarbon sequence related to the EBA period, which is the most important archaeological process of the region and marked by the Caucasus culture, have been only found at Sosoyuk and Büyüktepe. At both sites, radiocarbon datings are available for all sub-stages of this process, namely EBA, and they mark the 800 years between 3000 and 2200 BC. The existence of the periodical changes and of the sub-periods have been revealed to a large extent with archaeological material based on ceramic. In this respect, Sosoyuk offered a stronger context, including radiocarbon datings and archaeological materials. Büyüktepe presented a very different view in this respect. The fact that this site is a temporary seasonal settlement and the absence of a strong cultural context has made the analysis of the process difficult. On the other hand, the fact that Sos excavations took shorter than expected than the final reports have not published yet should be still considered as deficiencies in the clear understanding of the EBA process in the region. Sosoyuk presented the rich radiocarbon readings and archaeological context for Middle Bronze Age, which is the one of the most problematic periods for not only the region, but entire mountains, Eastern Anatolia, mean Southern Caucasus. These readings and the cultural context show that the settled life at the site continued uninterruptedly and marked to 2000 and 500 BC. This is an important argument against the thesis that during the period mounds were abandoned and settled life was interrupted through the Eastern Anatolia for many years. In this respect, when we look at the Middle Bronze Age process, we see that the region is in close relationship with the South Caucasus. Triality, Bedeni, and Martkopi-influenced ceramics found in the Sosoyuk and early Koshai excavations. They are not too much. They are clear evidence for this situation. In this respect, the northern part of the Eastern Anatolia presents a different world. Unfortunately, there is no data for this period in the radiocarbon datings of the other 3 centers except Sosoyuk. As in the Southern Caucasus, archaeology from late Bronze Age and the early Iron Age transition process emerges as a single phase in the Erzurum Karst Plateau. We see the strongest radiocarbon evidence of this period at Sosoyuk and Pulur. The existence of this period at Pulur was proved with the two tombs which Koşay discovered outside by Höyük, outside the Höyük. The existence of same period at the site was also proved by radiocarbon sample taken during the lastly sounding. The most problematic situation, the archaeological context, including architectural remains of this period, is very weak at the sites. The context of this periods consisting mostly ceramic evidence. The weakness of architecture at the mounds will be more understandable if it is considered that this period was a process in which pastoral groups were active through the region in the form of principalities, and the settlements have turned into defensive units at higher elevations. In this case, this phrase should be given between 1,500 and 1,000 according to source and puller data and datings. The strongest radiocarbons of the Iron Age came from Alaibi together with Sosuyuk. At both sites, the sub-periods of the Iron Age, namely the Middle and Late Iron Age, couldn't be revealed very clearly. At Sosuyuk, especially the Middle and Late Iron Age layers with ceramic and radiocarbon datings took their place in its stratigraphy, but their position in the archaeology of the region and its commands are still problematic. As known, while the process was represented by the first central authority, Rartu Kingdom, which was centered at one basin, the archaeological data regarding the local powers at the north are far below expectations. A similar situation is valid for the Late Iron Age period. The archaeological appearance of the region under strong Persian domination through the Near East is very problematic in the terms of available data, archaeological and radiocarbon datings. As a result, it's appropriate to give the Iron Age between 1,000 and 200 in the light of Sos and Alaibi radiocarbon datings. Finally, the available data show that the studies on a regional scale are also extremely important in the archaeology. When regional data, namely fragments of the big picture, become more numerous, it will be easier for us to complete the big picture. What we need is the increase of the number of regional studies. By helping of these fragments, we will be completed the big picture later, just like a puzzle. Let's multiply regional projects as much as possible and then come together and integrate them within the framework of cooperation and sharing. It's like completing a big puzzle, just as it was achieved in this symposium. Thank you very much for your patience.